Subscribe to The Best Revenge if you believe that silence can speak louder than betrayal, and sometimes being forgotten is the best thing that ever happens to you. Give this video a like, because what I'm about to share will stay with you long after it ends. Hi, I'm Andy. I'm 65 years old, born and raised in America, and for 35 years straight, I worked like a machine for the people I loved. But on the day I turned 65, my first birthday in retirement, I realized the people I gave everything to never really saw me at all. No phone calls, no cake, no surprise visit from my kids, not even a last-minute text from my wife. Just me. A quiet living room. A bottle of wine. 6 clean glasses I'd set out earlier, still untouched. I waited. I sat there all dressed up, thinking, maybe they're planning something. Maybe they're running late. Midnight passed. I looked at the clock, 12:03 a.m., and I felt this numbness crawl over me. They forgot me. Or worse, they remembered and didn't care. Carol, my wife, came home that night around 1 a.m. She was out with her friends. I asked her softly, "Did you forget what today is?" She glanced at me, kicked off her heels, and said, "I've had a long day, Andy. We're not kids anymore. It's just a birthday." Then she went to bed. I sat there alone in that silence. And it was the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels loud, like a truth you've been avoiding is suddenly screaming in your ear. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said, "Take it." "Good morning, Mr. Andy," the woman said, bright and professional. "This is Michelle from Legacy Capital Bank. Just wanted to let you know the asset transfer has been finalized." "Transfer?" I asked. "Yes, sir," she said. "Your trust, real estate holdings, and retirement investments have all matured. You're now listed as the sole active trustee of 3 properties and a diversified account portfolio." I was quiet. She continued, "It's rare to see someone manage this well on a technician's salary. You've done very, very well, sir." That word again, sir. It echoed in my chest, because my own family hadn't called me that day, but the bank did. And as she read me the numbers, my assets, my properties, the true value of what I had built with my calloused hands, I realized something. They had never seen me as a man. Only as a wallet, only as a ride, a loan, a provider. Never once as someone who might choose not to give. So I stood up, I looked around my quiet house, and I smiled for the first time in months. Because being forgotten meant I was finally free. The morning after that call, I made a pot of coffee, not for anyone else, just for me. I sat in my favorite chair, opened the folder of old papers I kept tucked away, and for the first time in my life, I looked at my future, not theirs. You see, over the years, I had quietly invested. Rental properties, index funds, a couple old duplexes in towns no one cared about, until real estate exploded. I never talked about it. While they were posting photos from Cancun and swiping my card for new phones and furniture, I was building quietly. I never asked for thanks. I just assumed love was a fair trade for sacrifice. But that night, my birthday night, I understood something that hit me like a cold wind. I didn't have a family. I had dependents. There's a difference, so I made a plan. I didn't scream, I didn't threaten, I didn't throw things, I smiled, and I called my lawyer. "Let's redo everything," I said. "The trust, the will, all of it." He hesitated. "Are you sure you want to exclude them?" I replied. "I'm not excluding them. They stepped out on their own. I'm just making the paperwork match the reality." That week, I moved into one of my own rental homes. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I let Carol keep the big house. No fights, no drama. I just left. I told my kids I needed space. They didn't ask why. A month passed, then 2. No one came looking. But you know who did? A neighbor. Her name was Marcy, widow, raised 3 kids on her own, works part-time at the local bakery. She knocked one morning with a basket of muffins. "I see your porch light on every morning before the sun's up," she said. "Figured anyone who wakes up that early deserves warm blueberry muffins." We talked. Nothing romantic, just real. She didn't ask me what I did for work. She didn't care how many properties I owned. She asked me what kind of music I liked, when was the last time I danced, what kind of childhood I had. And you know what? I couldn't remember the last time anyone asked me those things. Certainly not my own family. 3 months went by. No birthdays, no holidays, no calls. I thought maybe, just maybe, one of them would show up, knock on the door, ask where I'd gone, why I'd left the house, why I left them. But they didn't. They were too busy posting group photos at restaurants I once paid for, celebrating achievements I once funded, living in the comfort I worked myself to the bone to build. Then one day, Carol called. Her tone was casual but tight. "Hey, just checking in. I noticed the mortgage payment didn't go through this month." I smiled to myself. "Oh, right, that's because the account is in my name, and I closed it." Silence. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice sharper now. I said calmly, "I stopped paying for a house I don't live in anymore." "You can't just—" "Carol," I cut in, "you stopped showing up long before I did." She went quiet. Then she hung up. The next day, my son Jake emailed me. The subject line, "Dad, what's going on?" "No, happy belated birthday." "No, I miss you." Just panic. Because the money dried up. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about losing comfort. But I had already made peace with it. I was spending time with people who asked how my day was, not just for my checkbook. I started going to the local VFW hall on Thursday nights. I joined a chess group. I took walks. I wrote letters to myself. For the first time since I was 22, I was living for me. And it felt like breathing after years underwater. Then the final twist came. My lawyer called me on a rainy Monday morning. "We finalized the new will," he said. "You're free to share it or not. It's entirely up to you." I thanked him and hung up. I didn't tell anyone. Because this time, I didn't need anyone's permission to be the man I always was. 3 years passed. I didn't disappear completely. I sent the occasional holiday card. No return address, no message, just my name, signed at the bottom in quiet ink. Every so often, I'd hear through old friends how Carol had downsized, how the kids had taken on second jobs, how they whispered in family circles about how I'd changed. But I hadn't changed. They just finally saw who I was without the money covering it all. Then, one spring morning, Carol received a letter. The return address was my lawyer's office. Inside, an invitation. "You are formally invited to the reading of Andrew Mitchell's final estate plan." Carol called my number 6 times. No answer. Jake texted, "Dad, is this real? Are you sick?" I wasn't, but I had no interest in explaining myself anymore. At the reading, they all showed up, every one of them. Carol, Jake, Michael, even Emily, my daughter, who hadn't spoken to me since I didn't co-sign her third house. The lawyer walked in, calm, professional, holding a black folder. He opened it. "To my ex-wife, Carol, I leave the memories of a man who once gave everything to make you comfortable. I hope you find comfort within yourself now." She gasped softly. "To my children, I leave the understanding that love is not earned through blood, but presence. You had my time. You had my heart. You had your chance. What you do with that truth now is up to you." Jake stood. "This is a joke. He wouldn't do this. Not to his own family." The lawyer raised a hand. "There is one more beneficiary." They froze. The room went still. And then he said her name. "Marcy Ellis." Whispers. Confusion. Carol spat. "Who the hell is Marcy?" The lawyer continued without flinching. "To Marcy, I leave my home, my investments, and everything I built in quiet hours because she never asked for anything, yet gave me back myself." The room imploded. I wasn't there to see it. I was on the coast that day, reading a book, drinking strong black coffee, watching the waves, because finally, after 35 years of giving, I had chosen myself. And that, my friends, was the best revenge of all. This season picks up after Andy has left everything to Marcy and quietly disappeared from the lives of his entitled family. But unfinished business, old guilt, and a buried truth are about to bring the past back to his door. Season 2, they came back, but I wasn't the same man anymore. It started with a knock, 3 soft taps on my porch door one Sunday morning. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, standing there was Emily, my daughter, tears in her eyes, hair tied up like she used to when she was little and scared. "Dad, can I talk to you?" I should have said no, but I stepped aside. She didn't say much at first, just sat there, staring at her hands. Then finally, "Did you mean it? What you wrote in the will?" I stayed quiet. "I was stupid," she continued. "We all were. We thought you'd always be there, that you were safe to ignore." She looked up at me. "We didn't deserve you." It was the first time I'd seen remorse on any of their faces. But it didn't fix everything. "Why now?" I asked. She hesitated. Then, with a trembling voice, "Jake's been sick. He collapsed at work. Doctors found something in his lungs." Suddenly, the room felt smaller. I had every reason to stay cold, to turn away. But my heart didn't work that way. I visited Jake the next week. He was thin, pale, but alert. When he saw me, he looked ashamed, not angry, not entitled, just broken. Dad, he said, I don't want anything from you. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. We sat in silence after that, but it wasn't heavy silence this time. It was healing silence. In the months that followed, something changed. Not overnight, not with big dramatic gestures, but with small ones. Emily began calling every Sunday. No requests, just conversation. Jake sent a birthday card, a real one, with his handwriting, the same scrawled loops he had as a kid. Even Carol wrote a letter. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't talk about money. She simply said, I think I got so used to being your priority, I forgot you were a person. And then, I'm sorry, Andy. I really am. I didn't respond, but I cried reading it. Not because it fixed anything, but because for once, someone saw me. Not for what I gave, but for who I was. 1 year later, I invited them to dinner at Marcy's. She cooked paella. Emily brought dessert. Jake helped set the table. No one talked about the will. No one asked about the money. We just ate, laughed a little, listened, existed. It wasn't perfect. It was still raw, but it was real. And after everyone left that night, I stood in the doorway with Marcy, watching the taillights disappear. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, You didn't just get your revenge, you got your peace. And that was more than I ever expected. The seasons passed. I planted tomatoes in the backyard, started volunteering at the community center twice a week. Life was quieter now, not empty, just lighter. Then, one afternoon, I was sorting through old boxes in the shed when I found something I hadn't seen in years. An old photo album, one I used to update every birthday until they stopped coming. Photos of Jake in Little League, Emily with her first violin, Michael covered in cake at age 2. I flipped through the pages slowly, feeling a strange mix of ache and warmth. That night, I sat on the porch with Marcy, album in hand. I gave everything to people who once lit up my whole world, I said, and for a while, when they forgot me, I felt like none of it mattered. She smiled gently, brushing her thumb across one of the photos. But it did matter, she said. You loved, fully. That's never wasted. I nodded, but I couldn't stop wondering, had I changed so much, or had I finally come home to who I really was? A week later, Emily came by again. This time she brought someone new, a boy, about 9 years old, thin, quiet, serious eyes. Dad, she said nervously, this is Caleb, your grandson. The word hit me like a wave. I didn't know what to say. She knelt down next to him. Caleb, this is Grandpa Andy. The boy looked up at me. Hi, he said softly. Mom says you know how to fix things. I chuckled. Sometimes, I said, kneeling beside him, but mostly, I just listen now. He smiled, a real one. They stayed for dinner, and before they left, Emily hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time in years. Thank you for letting me try, she whispered. I didn't need to answer because sometimes healing doesn't come through words. It comes through presence. That night, I updated the photo album. The last picture, me, Marcy, and Caleb, planting lavender in the garden, I tucked it in with the others. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel forgotten. I felt whole. Weeks turned into months. And just like that, the porch became a place where stories were shared again, where laughter didn't feel forced, where family, what was left of it, what had been rebuilt, came not out of guilt, but choice. Caleb started calling every Friday. Grandpa, did you fix the old radio yet? Can we finish the model plane Sunday? Are you going to tell me more about how you built your first house? And I did. Not because I owed him, but because he saw me. Not as a provider, not as a wallet, but as a person. I kept my distance from Jake and Michael. Their changes were slower, but they were trying. And Carol, she remarried eventually, sent me a photo from her wedding day. No words, just the picture. That was enough. I looked at it and smiled because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was free. Not rich with money, though I had plenty. Rich with time, with clarity, with peace. And on my 69th birthday, 4 years after the birthday they all forgot, my house was full. Emily brought Caleb and brownies. Jake came late, but brought an old framed photo of us fishing from when he was 12. Michael brought his new fiancée. No gifts, just presents. And as we all sat around the table, laughing softly under the warm kitchen lights, I realized something simple and true. I had finally become the man I used to pretend to be. Not just strong, not just dependable, but whole. And that was the best revenge I could have ever asked for. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that silence doesn't mean weakness, and walking away can be the beginning of everything.